The holidays are supposed to be the most wonderful time of the year. But when someone you love is missing, lights feel dimmer, songs hit differently, even joy can feel like a reminder of what or who is no longer here. Maybe you've watched someone you care about facing their first Christmas without their spouse, or a parent longing for a child who should be here. If you know someone grieving this season, or maybe you've been that person grieving, drop a heart in the comments below. Now, you may want to help your friend, but fear right now may be creeping in with thoughts like, what if I say the wrong thing? What if I hurt them more this holiday? Well, today we're going to talk about how to actually help, what comforts versus what hurts, and how you can show up with courage and compassion for your grieving friend this holiday season. I'm Dr. Kathleen Mangus, and many of you know that last year, back in February of 2024, my son Vincent died very unexpectedly by suicide. My family and I are still walking this road, but the way people have cared for us has really made us feel God's comfort. I love the verse in Romans 12:15 that says, mourn with those who mourn. We are not meant to let people grieve alone. So let's dive in to this teaching. When my family was preparing for my son Vincent's celebration of life service, our pastor gave us a nugget of gold that I have never forgotten. And I want to share this with you because it is just from his years of experience. He said something to this effect, maybe not exactly this way, but this is how I heard it or remembered it. He said, you're going to hear beautiful things from people, and people will try to comfort you, but you'll hear at least one or two really stupid comments from people. Don't get offended. Just know it's coming and keep moving. So I want to start this teaching with 5 things not to do this holiday when someone is grieving. So this holiday, number 1, and this goes for besides just the holidays in general, if you're going to a viewing, a funeral, a wake, interacting with somebody who has recently had a loved one who has passed away, the number 1 thing not to say, not to do, is use cliches that minimize the pain. Okay, here are some of these cliches. If these are in your vocabulary, to the extent you can hit like the delete, please try to delete these. Here's some phrases that minimize pain and don't acknowledge or allow the person to really process the grief. Heaven's gained another angel. Your loved one's in a better place. Everything happens for a reason. God needed them more than we did. You'll get over it. At least you still have your other children. These statements, while well-intended, and in our culture, I know they are meant to convey empathy or some level of connection and compassion, or basically to whip the person into shape so that they can just get back to functioning. These statements shut down grief, they force fake gratitude, and they skip right over the heartbreak that that person is experiencing. So, I don't know. If you've ever had someone say one of these things or worse or different, just something that really kind of was offensive, type yep down there in the comments. Now, as a quick theological note, I, there are many Christians that are confused on this fact, but people, when we pass away, we do not transform into angels. Angels are separate, specifically created beings by God. And humans do not become angels. It's when our flesh dies, our spirit is separated, and we do go to one of two places, heaven or hell, but we are not transformed into an angel. Another theological note, I do feel I need to share this because I have had some people ask me about why God did this to my son. And our theological position is God didn't do this to my son. God doesn't take our loved ones prematurely, but God and mankind has an enemy called the devil. And according to the Bible in John 10, verse 10, it says, the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy. So we do blame when people do die prematurely, and there are, Jesus laid hands on the dead or commanded the dead to rise. So we know that all of those examples were people who died outside of God's perfect timing for them, and Jesus was allowed to raise them from the dead. That wasn't considered sin, and it's because they died prematurely. So we like to place blame. Death comes from the enemy when the enemy deceived Adam into disobeying God and taking the fruit. Adam and Eve then lost the right to immortality, and that is why we have death. It's a generational curse from original sin. But back to how you can help those who are grieving. So what grieving people usually need, instead of just those closed cliches, and I know we're all searching for what is the right thing to say to these people, and it can be, if you're not going through grief, if you haven't gone through grief or experienced it or been trained on it, you may not know exactly what to say. So here are some examples I want to give you that I think are better than some of the cliches that people typically say. And here are some things. This is so hard, but I'm here with you. Your love for them is so deep. Tell me more about them when you're ready. You don't have to be okay right now. And a final one is, I'm holding space for you however you feel today. So just recognize grief is holy ground, and don't rush people off of it. It is a journey, and the Bible calls it, you're walking through the valley of the shadow of death. It's a walk, it's not a sprint. Well, number 2 of things to not do, don't surprise your grieving friend with emotional triggers. Now, what could that look like? That can look like sending old photos or Facebook memories to them without warning. This can trigger what's called a grief bomb or a grief wave. And this has happened to me a number of times. Even just last week, I had somebody call me out of the blue and, start. They did ask if I had some time to talk about my son. And then I did. I was willing to go into this conversation. But But um, I'm glad that they asked first if I had time because I I normally am doing many other things throughout my day, and it does take kind of an emotional reset when I'm thinking about Vincent and depending on what they are asking or how the conversation could go. And I did not actually know this person or where they were coming from. So, it turned out to be an okay conversation, but sometimes when you just send something, it can, if the person, if the grieving person is not even thinking about their loved one, it can trigger something if it is, if there were negative aspects around their death, especially, it can trigger something negative. But even if it was they had, a peaceful passing and everything was happy, the person can still be dealing with so much heartbreak that any thought or bringing up pictures of them or memories can trigger what's called a grief wave, where they just they may start crying uncontrollably. They can't regroup from the memories. So this can happen. And so here is a better way. Instead of just uh let's say you come across something and for you it's a good memory, it brings maybe joy or something, it was a real happy thing, but don't assume that's how it's going to be for the other person. And so before hitting send in any way with that, I would just recommend sending a text and say something like this: I saw a photo, would you like me to send it to you today? And then let them choose the moment. And also, don't expect a reply. If they don't reply, that probably means they are just not able to deal with it. And I would say leave it at that. The Facebook memories come back year after year. You'll get another chance, and that person will be at a different place in their grief cycle. Okay, number 3, don't push holiday cheer. Have you ever heard somebody, trying to coax somebody who's grieving, or just, they're just really, they're in a state of really contemplating things. And somebody might say, come on, bumping them, come on, try to enjoy Christmas. Can't you just snap out of that Grinchy mood? Look, grief does not follow the holiday calendar. Grief's also not linear. So sometimes a person's response, it can be really confusing when you're grieving. Your grieving friend may express joy or happiness at some event or at a certain moment, but then you may see them 15 minutes later and they're wailing over something, right? Something else maybe triggered something. Maybe the following day they're crying, or maybe for a number of days, depending on how frequently you see them, you're seeing them. They're always in a tearful state. Look, you just cannot force grieving people to get happy or find their happy place. However, I will say, with a word of caution, my doctor did explain to me, and shortly after Vincent passed, I reached out for professional psychological help and medical help, as well as tremendous prayer support. Grief was, what my family experienced, what I experienced. I had never experienced that before, and although I did not exactly know how to deal with these things, I knew enough to know I didn't know, and I needed to reach out for those professional services. But when I talked to my medical doctor about what was going on, he was really clear to explain to me that grief is very different than depression. And he said, Kathleen, don't let people start saying that you're depressed. He said, grief is actually an emotional response that is triggered by a specific event. And in my life, my feelings changed, or what I was going through changed because of a very specific event. the passing of my son. And this is contrasted. So, this is the difference between grief, whereas depression is generally an ongoing state of hopelessness. There is not necessarily one specific event that you can look back at to say, I was one way before this, and then this came on, and I was, my things changed. So I just shared this with you because if your friend had already been battling depression, which then has become compounded by grief after the passing of a loved one, then just realize they may be taking medications as well that may impact or alter their mood. So just have grace with them. And while you are probably able to enjoy and celebrate in this time of year when many people do experience those feelings of joy and elation, somebody going through grief just may not be able to, and it is okay to let them work through what they need to work through. Number 4, don't set timelines or push your expectations on them. Things like saying, wow, it's been 6 months. Aren't you over this yet? Or when are you going to get back to your old self again? I will never be my old self again because I buried my child. But I am learning how to move forward with hope. And so I just share that with you because I think a lot of us have this expectation on other people that they're going to get over it or get back to however they were. And life's trauma and situations don't allow you to go back to something like that. You're going to have to figure out how to move forward. And please give space for your friends to be able to do that. Number 5 of what not to do, don't compare grief stories. Oh, early on, I had somebody call and tell me, and I want to have a tremendous compassion. At the time, I was just so stuck in my own grief. I'm not sure I was able to have compassion, but this person kept telling me about how their child died and, all the things that they did to go through it. And I mean, I just could not relate. It was the situation of my son was so different, even though they both were children, it was completely different circumstances. And so trying to compare grief stories, when my so and so died, I did blah, 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 or this is what happened to them, this is what the doctors, that is not necessarily the most helpful thing. Or also, this is another cliche, but it kind of falls into this don't compare grief stories. When somebody says, I know exactly how you feel. No, you don't. Every loss is unique. And even within my home, each member of my family, we had a different relationship with Vincent. And so the emotional response to grief was different for each of us. So your presence is more helpful. Your presence is more helpful than your story in the early stages of grief. Now, I just want to share, 5 things. If you didn't know their loved one, here are kind of 5 safe and simple ways you can show care to your friend. 1, text them with no response required. Things like thinking of you, peace and strength today, no need to reply, you're not alone. These messages bring comfort without creating emotional pressure. Number 2, respect their energy, but invite gently. Some grieving people just don't have the strength for conversation, but others really need human connection. So sending a text to say, I'm taking a walk, want to join me? right? You're still giving an invitation there, um, but based on their energy level, they can respond or not. And if you go visit in the home, uh, try to stay at the door, try to keep it literally to 10 minutes or less. And if you don't have to go in, that's even better because a lot of grieving people have not been able to maybe keep up their house. Okay. Number three, things that you can do: offer specific practical help. Here's some ways. I'm placing a grocery order. Can I add a few things for you? Can I drop off a meal this week on Friday? Would it help if I wrapped some of your Christmas gifts or helped order presents for you online? You know, you can go over and help. Even better might be to do the thing. And this is more in the initial stages of grief when they're more in shock versus, 6 months to a year. Um, there are steps going through grief where if you've gone through grief share, my family, we went through grief share, and that really helped us to just recognize that there is a place where we have to get back to taking responsibility. But there is in the early stages, I mean, a lot of people are in shock, and just depending on whether you're alone, whether you have siblings to support you, whether you are military and you're all alone in a community, you just have to weigh those circumstances. And obviously, I pray God always gives you the guidance on what to do, but certain people will need more help than others. But whatever you can do to help along the way is great. So if you can do something specific for them, great. Otherwise, occasionally offer those specific things for help. Number four that I thought was really helpful, and if again, if you didn't know the person who passed away, but you're friends with the grieving person, you might want to send them a restaurant gift card and then offer some companionship with that. So for example, if you have a friend and her husband passed away, and maybe you never really knew her husband because you interacted with her, the two of you volunteered together at the library or at school or at a church or something, but you could say, I'd love to take you out for a meal if it feels good to you. Well, if she was used to going out to meals with her husband, then she may be missing that. So that might be great to go out to a meal and figure it out if you want to go Dutch. But she, in the earlier stages, she may be really just struggling with regularly eating. A lot of widows lose their appetite just from the stress of losing their spouse. And so sending a gift card, especially to a restaurant that has takeout, that may be a great solution. It's something practical, so I just throw that in the mix. And then number five, include them, but without pressure. So for example, if your church is having a Christmas party or some kind of, event, we'd love to have you join us at the movie or church Christmas concert, but it's totally okay if you're not up to it yet. Or something like, I'm going to the 11 o'clock Sunday service. Want me to stop and pick you up? An invitation always says, you still matter, and I'm thinking of you. But allow them the grace to say, no, I'm not ready to resume those activities yet. There can be people can feel a lot of pressure. And what I mean by that is the grieving person, sometimes when you are going back to those public places, you can get swamped with people who have good intentions. And this happened to me and my husband when we returned we used to go to an 11 o'clock church service. And week after week, when the service was done, we'd come out to the foyer trying to get to our car, and we'd invariably get stopped by somebody who would say, oh, hey, we just wanted to express our deepest sympathies over your son's passing. And this, I mean, this went on week after week after week, and it was always somebody different who we hadn't caught up with. But it almost became like I became like fearful. I'm like, oh my goodness, the service is over. All I wanted to do was come to church and worship God, and all of these somewhat strangers. I mean, they weren't the closest people, but they are part of our church, and they had good intentions. But I really felt like I was coming out of the door and I would get swarmed by people, and it would just bring this wave of sadness and grief over me. And fortunately, what we ended up doing is our church was growing so much that our pastor started a different service on a different night. So we just quit going to that service. We went to a different service, and then we were interacting with a whole bunch of different people that really didn't know us from before and didn't know our story, or for whatever reason didn't bring that up. So, it was kind of like getting a fresh start without having to go to a whole different church, which is not what we wanted to do because we love our church family and they are part of our journey. But just be sensitive about that. Okay, where am I going now? Okay, now if you did know their loved one, so maybe you and your husband were, really good friends with another couple, and one in that couple passed away, or maybe it was your brother-in-law, sister-in-law, something like that, then maybe there's a few different things that you can do here. So I just still want to give you 5 practical tips. One, again, if you have memories, always ask permission before sharing those memories. So I have a sweet memory of so and so, would today be a good day to share it? And then another thought is, if you are mailing a Christmas card to, a family member, friends, somebody, and you have a memory enclosed inside, I recommend please do this. On the outside of the envelope, write memory enclosed. And one thing that happened to us last Christmas is we got so many just sweet, wonderful Christmas cards. And oh, by the way, I'm not doing Christmas cards again this year. All right. But we got one Christmas card, at least, possibly two, but one of them, and I know this person themselves were just dealing with their own grief, but they worded it in such a way to say, we're so sorry, this will be the worst Christmas you've ever had since Vincent died and the chair at the table is empty. Now, again, boom, that's like a grief bomb. You don't need to state the obvious in the Christmas card. We know the chair is empty. Our son is not there and he's not coming back. We don't need somebody to state that in a Christmas card. And it derailed me. And here I am a year later. I'm still talking about it. So it obviously derailed me. Oh, God heal my heart from that. But I just share that, I had to set all of our Christmas cards aside till after the new year, and I just kind of went through them at that point in time. But had I known, some had people had included some memories, and some were sweet. Some included, some things that I wanted to keep and set aside. But just including something on the outside that says memory enclosed, that can help somebody determine, they can set the space, the time aside when they want to emotionally grapple with that. Okay, number 2, obviously, if you're close with somebody who has lost a loved one and you were really close with the loved one, especially maybe it was your sibling and now you're interacting with your in-law, you may want to acknowledge important dates like the birthday or anniversary or the anniversary of their passing. But can I suggest you do it gently? And what I mean by that is, somebody may ask, is there anything specific you'd like me to do to honor Vincent's legacy or on his birthday? And so, in the past, periodically, I will put on Facebook, if you want to donate to our church's doing a building fund. And Vincent did do his Eagle Scout project there. And that's really where I would say his name and legacy is. So I kind of direct people there. But, other people have different ideas of what they want to do. And so you just have to tread that lightly, and maybe you have your own tradition, something you want to do. And of course, if you're way out of town and you can't do something tangibly there, I think many if they've had a funeral service, you have the option of planting a tree in somebody's name. I personally, that per se, I mean, a lot of people did plant trees in Vincent's name, and I I feel like that has more meaning for that person because they were out of town and they were able to do something tangible. So just, whatever you need to do, if it's a certain date that is going to trigger something, try to follow up with the person who's grieving. Okay, number three, ask that person before sending photos or social media memories. We kind of talked about this, even if you don't know the person that passed away. But you may say, I saw a photo that made me smile. Would you like me to send it? As we shared before, photos can bless or blindside depending on where somebody is in their grief cycle. Number four, here's something though that you may not have thought of. Help create legacy projects, especially when you feel like the person may be ready for that. So offer to help in creating a photo book, or maybe at Christmas time, ask if they'd like a memory ornament. Shutterfly.com, and I don't have an affiliate link, but I use their products all the time. Shutterfly.com offers all kinds of amazing memorabilia items, such as photo mugs and blankets where you can have the person's photo put on it, or even jigsaw puzzles made. Now, again, that the person may or may not want photo memorabilia. And so that's where you really have to know what's going on in the life of that person. And so that's why I'm talking about people that you're pretty close with. Number five, you may want to offer to help with thank you cards. Many families feel pressure to send thank you notes after a funeral. And so this would be more, since we're in the holiday time frame, if you are aware of somebody that has had a loved one pass away, the late October throughout November, December time period, you may want to volunteer if you feel like you can do that. Can I help you prepare to send thank you cards for an hour this week? Like if you have a busy schedule and can't dedicate a block of time, pick a time, go over, even if you can lick envelopes or put, stamps on envelopes or put address labels on, whatever you can do, 30 minutes to an hour. Trust me, it is very helpful to a person whose brain is just trauma brain really has you really have a hard time just doing simple tasks. And even just having somebody tell you, hey, let's print these cards out, or let's print these labels out, or getting the labels from the funeral home if they produce those for you, or putting the stamps, whatever that is. Sometimes just having somebody take you through the tasks to do what you think is simple, but for somebody in grief, don't assume any task is simple. And this small act can remove a huge emotional burden from people. Well, I want to share two verses that I just encourage you to meditate on if you are praying for somebody who's in a season of grief. One is from Psalm 34:18, and it reads, "The Lord is close to the broken-hearted." And so, as you are lifting up your friend, please be praying that they will feel the Lord's closeness to them, and that they will allow their heart to be open to feel the Lord's closeness to them. A lot of times people are angry with God, they're blaming God that He took their loved one. And of course, theologically, that is just, it's not accurate. But in anger, our brain does go to blame, and we want to blame. We want to be able to find a reason why our loved one had to die. And it is just something that your brain goes to. So that is why grieving people really need their friends to rally and pray that they will still feel the Lord's closeness, and that they will, if they initially are not able to continue, getting up and coming to a church service, that they will come back, because the enemy loves it when people eventually drop out of church. So, to the degree you can help people get back and get connected, that is a beautiful thing. And then Galatians 6:2 says, carry each other's burdens. And so, if there are different things on this list that I'm giving you today that you can do to just help carry their burden in this season of grief, that is just how we as a body of Christ show up in love and become God's hands and huggers to bring comfort to those who are grieving. I want to share this prayer here, and this is not for somebody who is grieving. This is for people who are trying to help people who are grieving. And this, I'm going to just speak out this prayer. Father, thank you for helping us notice the hurting ones around us. Give us wisdom, what to say, when to reach out, and how to love tenderly. Help us to be patient, gentle, and present. May every text, every invitation, every small act be filled with your comfort and peace. In Jesus' name, amen. Before you scroll away, I want to ask you to think of one person right now who is grieving. Send them a short message. I'm thinking of you today. Don't put any pressure on them. Don't try to fix whatever problem they're having. Just love. Blessings and much love from me. See you in the next video.